Great. Let us review some of the formulas individually.
Please.
I would like you to please talk a bit about the formula that you have chosen to launch for the program with veterans, the cortisol.
Cortisol.
Let's just outline a bit about what you're doing for the veterans, and then let's talk about the formula itself.
For sure. This is a very magical time. I know when this gets seen at a later date, we spent a lot of the time on the phone today with the senator's office and beginning just to talk a little bit with some of the lower echelon folks over at Wounded Warriors. I'm a wartime veteran. I was a paramedic during the Vietnam era. I ended up staying stateside, fortunately. I took care of a lot of the guys coming back. I was a ward master at nighttime during the service at the age of 18. We used to work 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. I was on from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. So I saw that for years. My father was a World War II hero. I had 2 boats blown out from underneath him and all kinds of things, and had, at the time, horrible PTSD that we grew up with. As a result, it destroyed our family. My father was a very brutal man. From that, was not his fault whatsoever because of the PTSD. My father's been dead for many years, and I love and respect my father, especially now that I understood what happened. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is a terrible thing that happens to people. It need not be only veterans, but also civilians. Abuse, rape, the horrors of things, verbal abuse, physical abuse, all of these type of things. This is what it does. It's the fight or flight reflex that becomes activated and doesn't stop. Imagine being in fight or flight 24/7 all of the time. When that happens, we have what's called a circadian rhythm in the body. We often do tests, which is called an adrenal stress index test through the clinic, which actually measures the cortisol in the body every 6 hours on that, so it's done it 4 times. Now, there's a particular rhythm for it. When we see people with PTSD, again, it could be military or civilian, here's a point where it should be here, suddenly it will spike like this. They do not need to have an incident to make that occur, to go into fight or flight. The fact is that the body has completely fallen out of its natural circadian rhythm, and it's happening all on its own. Excess cortisol perpetuates excess cortisol. And so once this whole chain starts, it doesn't stop. It just can't. It's one of the only, the way to put it is, baby self-perpetuating machines in the world. Seriously, that does this is this cortisol. So I had very severe PTSD just from living at home. The service, like I said, I did not see war. I took care of the folks coming back from there. Some years ago, I came in contact with a veteran who was in very bad shape. Now, I had a tendency, like most vets do, is you don't think about it. Nah, can't be me, can't be me. You read about it and you go, no, because I was in denial about it, as most vets are. I had met a vet that was in such bad shape, I was horrified. This is a little more than 3 years ago. And our landlady had hired him to do some work here. And he was not only rather insane with me in here, but he would come in, talk, and tell me how he wanted to blow up the VA and kill all the doctors. And I was actually wondering if I should call them or not, but I turned out that this was actually very common behavior with some vets. I was so horrified, I made a promise to myself, and I prayed, and I said, I will find a cure for this no matter what. It took some while. Well, actually, it wasn't that long, but it took me a while until I began to have an understanding. See, when you're going to design, the first question is, well, the phrase actually is beginning rightly. So you have to ask the right questions. If you don't, then it's not going to happen. You know, otherwise it's like saying I have a list here of 1,000,000 number ones. If you go 1 and 1 is 2 on the first one, you can get all the others right. You still have a wrong answer. It doesn't matter. So the first thing I did was I asked myself, I says, well, what is excess cortisol in the body like? And I went, well, okay, well, that's like a neurotoxin. Okay, well, where do neurotoxins occur in nature? Well, we see them in things like box jellyfish, poisonous spider bites, rattlesnake bites, and so on. So I thought, okay, well, that's not too hard to neutralize. I had done that once, actually. I got myself stupidly bit by a rattlesnake when I was much younger. and very thin. And I called the poison center afterwards, and they said, "How much do you weigh? And how big was the rattlesnake?" It was a young one. So when they bite, they actually, everything comes out of it at one time, like that. So by the time I called them, my arm was starting to turn dark, and I was thinking, I really need to think about taking the next breath. Well, I had to test this formula, so I thought it's a do or die. When I was younger, I was a little wild. Well, actually, I was very wild. So I had a poison bite remedy, and I took it. And within moments, I could begin to breathe easier, and over the next hour, the darkness faded. So I knew how to neutralize neurotoxins, so we built this around it. This was so cool because we actually had this. I rebuilt that portion, and then we created a couple of other portions in there to help restore the normal harmonious circadian rhythm of the body by working with the adrenals, working with the firing mechanisms of the neurosynapses, and so on. And the first person we gave it to, so cool. It was a lady from Bosnia who had been there during the war and had a very terrible time, and she had a lovely younger daughter, and she brought her daughter with her to the sessions. She was a single mom at that time, and so I started to work with her, and I said, "Would you like to try something here?" And she said, "What?" And as I mentioned earlier, all of our new formulas, we always give the first batch away. We've done that for decades, so it's this wonderful Earth Friend tradition. She said, "Okay." She came back next week. She's in tears, and the little girl's in tears, and I went, I wonder how that worked. The little girl came up to me, and she was looking at me. I bent down, and she threw her arms around me, and she said, "Thank you for giving me my mommy back." And we realized we had a winner. Excuse me. Being a healer sometimes, it really touches my heart.
You're a bit of an empath too, huh?
What's that?
You're a bit of an empath too.
I wouldn't say so much as the fact that I get very involved with my patients, the lives of my patients. Being a healer, I'm not a doctor. It's a bit different with it. But to see something like that occur, we knew we had something wonderful. So we began to try it out. As we can see from some of the testimonials there were people that had problems who were beaten, raped, all kinds of horrible things, war people, people who were addicted to things. And these are one of the times that we say, wow, it far exceeded our design expectations. It was time to try it with the first vets. The first vet, so we put out word at the clinic, and a remarkable gentleman came. He was a former captain of the Army Rangers, Mr. Sergeant Binkley. Sergeant was his first name. Sarge had spent 11 years in the military. He was a graduate of West Point. He was wounded several times, once or twice quite badly, and he was discharged in bad pain and let go. He could not get the, this is a really sad story, the next part, but it has a great ending. He could not get the medications that he needed from the VA, so he actually robbed 2 pharmacies at gunpoint for them. He was so out of his mind with pain and PTSD. We did an adrenal stress index test, and his cortisol levels were almost twice normal of what they should be. He's one of the bravest men I've ever met in my life, and courageous, because truthfully, a lot of people go out and become shooters in public with far less problems than that and a much, much lower cortisol level. But he controlled it just through his own will and basically went to bed and didn't come out much. So when we met him, my first thought was how damaged this man is. But I know he's going to heal. In a short while, he began to feel better. And in a while, he began to get his life back. He began to date. He got a great job. He has lovely parents. And what happened then was I had a patient who was a wonderful filmmaker from Sony Productions. And he came and he filmed a remarkable documentary on this. It's an interview with Sarge and his parents. And at the end of it, he says, "I've been given a second chance at life." Everyone can see this on bringourvetsallthewayhome.org. Again, that's bringourvetsallthewayhome.org. Please take a look at the video on there. It's the one on the left that says full. Like us on Facebook at Bring Our Vets. But this is what we have. Right now, we're in the midst of getting this out to the VA. We've been talking today, as I mentioned, with a congressman's office, and we've started to open up communications, hopefully, with Wounded Warriors. We'll see what they have to say with that. And we want to take this out to the world now. It begins to work in the first day or two. If I could actually read a little bit of a testimonial, please. This just came in today, just a few minutes ago, actually, before we started this. I'm not going to read the ending of it just because he starts to praise me, and that gets kind of embarrassing for that. But let me read what he had to say about himself. And this is from RG from San Diego. I was not sure how to, use this thing, how to post a testimonial. He put it through that. I have had generalized anxiety disorder for 35 plus years. For 15 years, I was on multiple psych drugs for anxiety and depression. 1.5 years ago, I followed a program that had a natural path to getting off the psych drugs. I also made a commitment to eat 100% organically. It took 1 year and certainly was not easy, but I beat the odds and I got off all the 4 psych drugs! Exclamation. The depression lifted, but shaking off the anxiety had been very difficult, to say the least. I was at my wit's end and not being able to figure out what the main source of the anxiety was. I tried about every imaginable supplement and many different healing paths. I have been faithful to my 100% organic way of eating, drinking plenty of purified water, exercising regularly, and filling my mind with positive input. 2 weeks ago, I had family members fast and pray for and with me for the answer. The answer to those faith prayers came in the form of Elijah Free, that I had not heard of before, which surprised me in its incredible product, Cortisol-Ease. Rather than me starting to feel the positive effects within a couple of weeks, I noticed the effect upon my first dosage. I am taking it daily as instructed. It has helped me sleep as well. I was going to bed between 1 to 3 a.m. I believe the Cortisol-Ease has reset my circadian rhythm, wake-sleep cycle. I am now in bed and asleep by 11 p.m. every night. The daily anxiety switch that would flip on when I got up in the mornings has stopped switching on. This not only gives me relief, but it has given me hope for the future, and that I really can once and for all live an anxiety-free life. I am so grateful to have found Elijah Free. Since Cortisol-Ease started working on me so quickly, I also started taking TMJ-Ease and arthritis-Ease. And then it goes on to praise me, which I can leave out at the moment. That one just came in. I actually talked to him on the phone a few days ago, and I was one of those where I'd be embarrassed to say the things that he said about me. They were so remarkably lovely. But this is actually very, very common. The way it's designed, what it actually does at first is, I found in the neurotoxin, is the formula actually goes in and it begins to neutralize the excess cortisol in the system. Because it's a smart formula, it does not harm the the amount of cortisol that you need. So it only really just neutralizes the excess cortisol in the body, leaving you with what you need. So generally people take it 3 times a day. If you have trouble sleeping, you could take it before bed. On that, sometimes people take a 4th dose. Now, if you go to our site for Martin's, with this, you'll see that we have a whole lot of extra instructions on those. What you can do if you're having really bad PTSD episodes is you can just take it with you. Take a shot of it. Take a whole eyedropper if you need to. Take a second. That's enough. Usually what it does, it'll work by the time you count to 5 or 10, if it takes that long. And will work then with neutralizing the excess cortisol and bringing it back to normal levels. So it's a very, very fast worker. That was very, very, very important, because if you're in a PTSD episode, you don't need to get better an hour later. You need to get better now. Our high hopes is that the government is actually going to adopt this protocol. We have written a medical study. A representative came in actually from the pharmaceutical industry and co-wrote the study with me. So it's actually a study which is, should be medically accepted. So we're really hoping and praying that the government will learn about this pretty soon from the folks that we're connecting with, and that this can become adopted by our military forces. The other thing is it works just as well for civilians. Think of it this way. If you got a flat tire here in California, you got one in Afghanistan, it's the same kind of flat tire. You fix it the same way. If you get PTSD in the United States or you get it overseas, it's still treated the same way. Vets have a different attitude towards it, of course, than civilians, because if something happens to you in civilian life, that's really being a victim. If you are a member of the armed forces, you went on your own and you were not a victim. That was your choice to go and serve and to fight. So we are not victims. I never thought of myself that way in the military. However, growing up and what occurred in my home life, yes, I did feel that way, but no longer feel that way. I will say it saved my marriage. On this, I went through 2 marriages, unfortunately, because of the PTSD symptoms, but I no longer have that. I have been with the most wonderful woman, especially now since I healed from this using my own formula. The other thing you can do with it that's cool. I don't know if I mentioned to you, Martin. I'm an avid training person. I love to physically train at 65. Actually, I think I broke a running record today, but I take it after training. With that, because we build up cortisol in weightlifting and running, and as a result, when you take that after doing some kind of arduous training, your body does not build up the same type of toxins and tire you out. You can build muscle faster and stay leaner with it.
We have a list of all the symptoms that cortisol causes in the human body. I mean, we could probably go through them, but there's a good number of them that indeed would be a useful thing for people to be aware of, just how many aspects of their existence can be affected by excess cortisol that's not getting wiped away. So Elijah, could this be used just on a spot need? Like, let's just say that I'm not dissolving or removing the cortisol fast enough, and I would like to just wipe it off. Like,
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can I use it just now and then on an as-needed basis? Just take a hit, or does it need to build up? Like,
it really needs. If you have a spiking cortisol problem, it really needs to be taken on a regular basis with this. Otherwise, then, see, what you're doing, if there is a true cortisol spiking problem, that has affected the circadian rhythm of the body. So if it's intermittent, what you're doing, you're not going to bring it back to its normal rhythm. Just kind of here and there trying to tap it down. So we really encourage people that if they are having that symptomology, that the important thing here is that you remain really consistent with it for some time. Now, importantly also, too, even this has to do with the adrenaline system, you do not take this with an adrenal formula. They're going in two different directions, you see.
Yeah, we'll explain the difference in just a moment. I just wanted to check with you, like, for instance, a person who's having difficulty going to sleep. Would it work as a
it would help, yes, if the problem is spiking cortisol. As you know, with how much you know about products, it could be a dozen different things on why a person can't sleep.
Right.
But it would only work, it won't make you tired, it will lower the cortisol to a normal level at that time. So if that's what's needed to help sleep, then it will help under those conditions. Otherwise, it won't. Again, it's a very specific formula for what it does.
Okay, well explained.